Hello and welcome to the France 24 interview. Our guest today is Sadiq Khan. He is the mayor of London. He joins us from Buenos Aires in Argentina, where he's chairing the C40 World Mayors Summit. Thank you very much for being with us, Mr. Mayor.
It's a pleasure to join you today.
The summit is obviously focused on finding concrete local solutions to the fight against climate change. But I want to begin by asking you about the most famous address in your city, the 10 Downing Street, after the resignation of Liz Truss as Prime Minister after only 44 days in office. The United Kingdom is slated to have its 5th Prime Minister in just 6 years. So I imagine all the mayors around you must be asking you the question I will put to you: what is going on in the beacon of Western democracy?
Absolutely. The question you just asked me is exactly what the mayors around the world who are here at this summit, the business people from around the world who are here at this summit, and many others who are here have been asking me. And as a British person who's incredibly proud of my country, I'm embarrassed, because I've had mayors say to me, I thought my country was unstable. I've had business people say to me, I thought my country was embarrassing. And the behavior of successive conservative politicians has made my country a laughingstock around the world. We've been known historically for centuries as a beacon of democracy. We've been known for decades as a country, whatever your politics, whether you're Labour like me or Conservative, it is calm, it is stable, it provides certainty. And what you're seeing in British politics is surprising, it is shocking, but it's inevitable when you have a party that's run out of ideas. I am surprised, actually, that just after 45 days of being elected Prime Minister, Liz Truss has resigned, but it's the right thing for her to do. I think the Conservative Party, when they choose their next leader, that next leader must say to his colleagues, actually, the British public deserve the right to choose the next government, so they should have a general election to give the British public the chance to vote for a fresh start, and I would hope that fresh start would be Labour under Keir Starmer.
Right. Just very briefly on this issue. One of the names is the former mayor of London, who was just prime minister a few weeks ago and seems angling a comeback, Boris Johnson. What would your reaction be if the Conservative Party designates Boris Johnson as the new prime minister?
Look, Boris Johnson stopped being the prime minister in disgrace. He was shown to have lied. He brought in laws to restrict the rights of British people during the pandemic, and he himself broke those laws, and he, in the end, had to resign because of a sex scandal involving one of his closest parliamentary colleagues. I think the answer to the problems my country faces is not Boris Johnson. There's a great saying in my language called "once bitten, twice shy." And I think if he was to be re-elected by his party as the next Conservative leader, as the next Prime Minister, there'd be all sorts of problems in my country, all sorts of problems with the markets, and it would be the opposite of economic stability and calm that my country needs.
I want to turn now to the reason of your presence in Buenos Aires, trying to get the cities to act in the fight against climate change. We know the cities are responsible for a vast majority of global carbon emissions. The COP27 is just around the corner. What concretely can you do to fight climate change beyond words?
So the C40 organization of mayors, and I've got the privilege of being the chair of the organization, represents almost 100 cities across the globe, more than 700 million people. We are responsible for a large amount of the wealth created, but also, you're absolutely right, we're also responsible for a large amount of the carbon emissions. This gathering in Buenos Aires, Argentina, is the biggest gathering of mayors ever. And what we are doing is working together with tangible solutions to the problems we are facing. So yesterday, we announced plans over the next 7 years to create 50 million green good jobs going forward. Really important as we transition from the old fossil fuels world to the new environmentally friendly world. And today we've announced funding in excess of $1.5 billion to support cities in the global south. Cities and people in the global south are least responsible for climate change. It suffered the worst consequences of climate change. Just look at the flooding in Pakistan. Look at the heat waves in South America. Look at the droughts in Africa. These countries, these cities, these people didn't cause climate change, yet they're suffering the worst. So we're hoping that in advance of COP27, the national governments will see the leadership we're providing and will provide similar leadership to finally deliver the $100 billion that was promised, leadership to support those countries in the global south address the issue of loss and damage. And we are asking the United Nations, look, cities need to be around the table. It's quite clear national governments haven't made the progress they're supposed to made. And so the Conference of Parties should be extended to have cities and mayors working with the UN, working with national governments to tackle the climate emergency and to address the issue of air pollution as well.
Right. So if you're calling for national governments to have leadership, this means that they haven't been leaders, and actually that all the promises that were made back in Paris in 2015 have not been fulfilled, and basically we're going to miss the objectives that were set at the time because of a lack of leadership.
The conference in Paris in 2015 was groundbreaking, but the promises made in Paris in 2015 have not been kept by international leaders. There's only one country on course to meet the promises made in Paris. Of the C40 cities, more than 2/3 are on course to meet the promises made in Paris. National governments have got to see cities and mayors as allies, not adversaries. But what the evidence is if we were speaking 10 years ago, we'd be speaking about some countries being climate deniers. Thankfully, there is no country that is a climate change denier anymore. But what they've turned into is delayers. They are delaying action. So the countries, the national leaders are delaying action. The cities and the mayors are doing. And we need more countries to become like mayors, doers, to tackle the climate emergency.
Right, but what we're seeing now, because of the war in Ukraine and some issues with supply, is Germany going back to coal, fracking being debated in the United Kingdom. It seems that actually the trend is not very promising when it comes to fighting climate change.
It's weak leadership. Actually, Putin's unlawful invasion of Ukraine the cost of living crisis should necessitate increased urgency to tackle these issues. I'll give you one example. One of the reasons why energy prices has gone up so much in Europe is our reliance upon gas from Putin, but also petrol and gas from the Middle East. If we were to be more self-sufficient, if we were to invest in local wind, local solar, local hydrogen, local nuclear, we'd have energy security, and it would reduce the prices of energy, particularly when there is conflict in other places around the world. I'll give you a second example. One of the big challenges facing those watching this and those in London are the increased bills this winter in relation to keeping our homes warm. Well, if we were to have a revolution to retrofit our buildings to make them energy efficient, to have better insulation, to have reliance on renewables, it would reduce the bills that businesses and families are facing. What the invasion of Ukraine shouldn't be is an excuse for a green pass to kick the can down the road. And where you got to be suspicious is where national leaders make promises for 2050, 2065, 2040, when they themselves won't be the presidents and prime ministers anymore. You compare that to cities and mayors, we're taking action now.
Well, let me ask you, you promised that by 2030, London would reach net zero emissions. Well, will you keep that promise? Because you're saying national leaders are not fulfilling their promises. Will you be on time to reach that target?
We will, if we have support from our government. We're lobbying our government to give us more powers and resources. But in my own city, since I've been mayor, we've reduced the toxic air by almost 50% in the center of our city. an example of a change we can make in just 5 years of me being mayor. I'll give you another example of mayors across the world. We, over the course of the last year, the C40 mayors working together, have reduced toxicity in air, reduced air pollution in our cities by more than 5% just in 1 year. In my own city of London, we've peaked carbon emissions, we've reduced carbon emissions, we're reducing particulate matter, we're reducing nitrogen dioxide, and we now have a Green New Deal to create the jobs going forward that will support our economy. I want to double the size of the green economy in London over the next 7-8 years by 2030, double the amount of jobs in this sector, high paid, good jobs. And I've already set up green academies to train up Londoners for these future proof jobs. And that's the sort of urgency that's required by my government, but also across the world.
Sadiq Khan, I want to thank you very much for being with us from Buenos Aires in Argentina. Thank you for watching this edition of the interview here on France 24, and stay tuned for more news.